What race would you not date?
To be honest, I don't like black girls at all.
You don't like black girls? Oh my God.
No.
So if it ain't snowing, you're not going?
I'm not going.
Dr. Umar, please contact him. We lost another brother to the snow bunnies. No.
Mad bus driver here. Brothers and the ladies and haters that are most definitely watching. Yeah. So, the last video, I was talking about how there is not much time left. We ran out of time. The 1990s was the last decade you could have turned things around. The 1990s. Now, while you enjoy the images of brothers who are taking a smart way of rebuilding what will be left of the so-called African American community, the blackish community. These are going to be the brothers that are going to be separating themselves and their descendants from the traditional African American community, which will probably end up being a permanent underclass, thanks to the works of the Scraggle Daggle, the defective Stargate, their mama. The first trick, aka the white man has ever pulled, was to give you his woman. Not the last trick. It was the first trick. And it was your mama. You were looking out for a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Becky. You were not expecting your mama, Big Booty Brenda, to be the white man's woman. Anyways, while you enjoying the images of brothers making that type of power move, right? Back to there's not enough time, and how the 90s was the last decade. The last decade you could have turned things around. Why? Because a lot of stars aligned in the 90s. A lot of stars. Music, especially in the early 90s, it was going towards an Afrocentric, an urban-centric, hip-hop space. Movies, Malcolm X, Do the Right Thing, even more popular movies, more mainstream movies like Boomerang. There was a lot of distinguished gentlemen. There was a lot of films that came out during that time. You know, you got your rehash of the exploitation or the black exploitation flicks, like Boys in the Hood, Juice, and things like that. But yeah, Poetic Justice. You had a lot of movies that were popping for black folks in the cinemas, right? And they were serious films. They weren't Medea type films. They were serious films, and they were celebrated, and they were big time. Fashion, Cross Colors, Kyle Kanai, FUBU. Brothers was walking around with sneakers that had the red, black, and green, Afrocentric shit with an X on it. You know, like the Malcolm X shoes and stuff and shit like that. You even had t-shirts where you had your boy Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and others on some urban hood shit. You remember those days, right? On cable, there was, you could go and you can watch Def Comedy Jam. On BET had Comic View. Def Comedy Jam was dominating the comedy scene. I mean, there was nothing compared to Def Comedy Jam. And what Martin Lawrence would come out every week, and he says, what? We're black at your ass again, right? We're black again, right? So many things were lining up. The Million Man March. Brothers were atoning for mistakes many of them didn't even make. They're atoning for mistakes that their fathers made, their uncles made, the Negro down the street, they done made. The 1990s was the last decade where the talented 10th should have shown its face and has steered the culture to where they wish the culture to be now. From what they're saying the culture should be now, it should be in the future. The 90s was the last decade. Trust me. You're going to look back and be like, yeah. Because that was the last decade you could have pressed the reset button, culturally, and get these men back on the plantation. And they tried hard. And they got a lot of men back on the plantation. Because it was an exotic thing in the 90s, right? To see a brother that was what you would consider thugged out or a hood with a lily white chick. Especially in the South. A lily white, not one of those what they call wiggers. No. It was super ultra exotic to actually try to see a brother walking down the street with something Asian. Right? Now you can see it on Instagram all over the place. But think about it. Remember, the Dave Chappelle show. Charlie Murphy was talking about how he used to run with Rick James, and how Rick James has all these different women. And one of the set of women that he had was Orientals. He was like, you know how rare it is for a brother to get with an Oriental? And I was like watching that and I was like, Oriental? But I was living in a time where that was opening up and more brothers were starting to branch out into that arena. So thinking about how Charlie grew up, the 80s, the 70s, the 80s, especially the 80s when, you know, his brother Eddie was popping, things were a tad bit different. The 90s was the last decade. You could have corralled the African American community here in these United States of America and sent them in the right direction. So what failed? Oh, you got all types of excuses. You got all types of stories. But the problem you're having today is the problem that the brothers had back then. Everybody knows it. Everybody's saying it. But you know, there's so many people that still want to lay up with the problem. There's so many people, and some of you guys are listening to this, and will be listening to this in the future. You're laying up with the problem, and you know it is because you just have an affinity for it. You just gotta have it. It's your fetish. You gotta tap that ass. What is the problem? What stopped them back then? What always has stopped them? The women weren't with it. You wanted to do this Afrocentric type shit, but you wanted to do it on modern terms, where the women are independent from the men, or the it's 50-50 type of situation. This is what folks of the community were trying to do back in the 90s. The women were not into it. Why were the women not into it? The women were not into it because they are not your women. Never have, never will be. So let's keep it funky. Let's keep it funky like a mean donkey. Right? There's a video. Now, I don't know if I can put it up, but I'll try to see if I can find it. Where a chick's saying, why should I submit to a slave? I'll submit to a slave master, but I won't submit to a slave. This should show you what they believe about you, what they think about you. They tell you time and time and time again, why don't you guys get your shit together to lead and we will follow? But then when somebody comes around with some direction, they come up with all types of excuses for why they can't and why they will not. Because, oh, you just want to oppress us. It's slavery. Marriage is slavery. I'm not trying to be in the kitchen. I ain't trying to cook. Cooking and doing all this domestic work it's not productive. I ain't making no money. Doing that, all types of unnecessary drama. They always felt that way. Let's keep it funky. Your ancestors from back in the day, from way back in the day, before the 1800s, those men didn't get to choose what woman they were going to procreate with. No! Somebody had to bring those ladies, because your ancestors didn't bring them. Let's keep it funky. Because prior to the 1800s, you only had 400,000 Negroes in the United States of America, North America. Why is that? That's because you were brought over for work purposes only. Most of the slaves went to all the other parts of the New World. Brazil, heavy. Colombia, Venezuela, the islands, Dominican, Puerto Rico. The United States only had 400,000 and it stayed that way. It stayed that way through the whole time period. It didn't grow until post-1800s when they outlawed the transatlantic slavery. And then they had to be able to breed you guys. Because before they were breeding you with the Irish women. But that was undercutting the transatlantic slave trade because it was cheaper to get Irish women as slaves than it was for an African slave. Because remember what happened between England and Ireland back in the day. Whole wars fought for England to control that island of Ireland. And they won. They took over. They killed off most of the men and they shipped off a lot of the women and children. They shipped them off all over the places where England ruled. One of the places were the United States. And back then, slave masters prior to 1800s owned both black and white slaves. And they used to breed the Irish women with the African slaves. This is why when you say you got some Indian in your family, this is the same thing that, Henry Louis Gates was talking about. People thought they had the Indian in their family. They turn out it's really Irish in your family. That's why you got the quote-unquote good hair. Brothers, let's keep it funky like a mean donkey. They established breeding farms where they bred the population from 400,000 to 4 million by the Civil War. Let's keep it funky like a mean donkey. You were bred like cattle. These women carry that innately in their genes. You see, Shea Whitey came around and not only had Jimbo the Buck, the slave buck back there in the back rooms, lay his his pipe down, forcing him to breed these women. The slave master also interjected himself into it. And remember, you guys keep saying, especially the Hebrew Israelite brethren, you are your father's seed, right? So if Shea Whitey, the slave master, interjected himself, and if most of your mulattoes from back in the day were products of Shea Whitey and an African American female, be it consent or not, that child is going to want to basically gravitate towards the father. That's going to be the general creep, right? So why do you think they despise you to this day? Why do you think it fits so well when they say, oh, you waiting on your government, your white zaddy to take care of you? Because that's their daddy. They don't have respect for their real father. They have respect for their real father, the state. Y'all brothers got to understand, it's a wrap. It has never been, you will never be as close to righting the ship as the culture was back in the 90s. They're talking about reparations. You know folks is going to blow that quick. So they can holler and scream, and when them checks come down, smart people will invest it. Others will blow it. But you must understand that everybody's going to know it's going to be coming down, right? Everybody's going to know. So you do understand that prices of everything is going to go up, especially in the area where you live. You think you could buy some land? You think apartments is expensive now? You think home prices is through the roof now? Wait till they know that you're about to get a check. But that's not going to right the culture. That'll make it worse for you, though, because now you won't have an excuse because you've been paid. Brothers, the last time these Afrocentrics, these pro-blacks could have changed things was the 90s. They had everything aligned for them. But they squandered it because they couldn't get their women, quote unquote, their women on deck. Mad bus driver out. Let me come back with a PS for that ass. They just look better. Listen, they just look better. En masse, as I was saying before in the last video, en masse, these other races of women are just en masse looking better. Now, what do you mean en masse? Let me clarify. The sheer numbers. You do understand that there's more white women in this country of the United States of America than there are black people total, right? So that means there's more 4s, more 5s, more 6s, more 7s, more 8s, more 9s, more 10s, correct? And they're in different lifestyles. Some of them are more conservative, others are more liberal. Some of them are country, others are more city. Some of them like to be physically fit, others are couch potatoes. There's just more of them than there are of you. So, if every brother that's got his head together and wanted to make that power move, the easiest power move, the easiest leap would be something on the snow side of the game. That's just something on the slow side of the game. We're not even talking about how the neighborhoods are not just being gentrified by the yuppies. I want you to understand how these Latinos are coming in heavy. Not just from Mexico, but from Central America, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua. Coming in heavy. Costa Rica, Panama. And then, you know, your general Mexican, El Salvadorian. Opening up restaurants specifically for anybody can go, but it's an El Salvadorian restaurant. It's a Guatemalan market. All over the place. Where it used to be the hood. where the eggnogs used to roam. But the eggnog squandered that. They had that place, but they squandered it. Many of them got deeds to their house because their grandfathers worked for a company, a factory, whatever it is, for his whole life, took no vacations, died, passed it on to Big Mama, and Big Mama wanted to take a cruise. So what did Big Mama do? Big Mama refinanced. Big Mama refinanced the house that she had the deed to. And so instead of just going to the grave and passing that deed free to her kids, no, she wanted to live life. So she took that wealth and squandered it to get a refinance, and her kids couldn't maintain the new mortgage, and they lost the house. And then when Big Mama gone, and her daughter Keisha can't take the house, them baby kids that Keisha has got to go to. I know it's a long rant, but listen, as I was saying, they just look better. These little El Salvadorian Central American chicks are walking around here with the pretty face. A lot of them's bodies is on 5s or 6s, whatever it is, but they're just more gentile and feminine than your BWs that are running around here with the hard face. So a lot of brothers that are working class are going to have that option because the Central American ladies that come from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, things like that, they have a different attitude when it comes to dealing with how they see Black American men, it seems, where the Mexican females seem to be more conservative and less likely to flirt with you. The Central American ones seem to understand that there's a difference between the bums and the men that work. And so brothers are making moves on those Central American chicks heavy. The smart ones, at least. The dumb ones are still messing with the scraggle daggle and losing all damn day. Not because they're black women, but because of the attitude, because they're used to that BS. Let me stop because I could go on forever.